I never thought a simple garden hose would destroy my marriage, ruin my relationship with my sister, and force me to question everything I believed about love, loyalty, and the life I had built for 3 decades. My name is Margaret. I'm 52 years old, and I live in a quiet suburb of Portland, Oregon. For 30 years, I was married to Robert, a man everyone admired. He was a successful accountant, a devoted father to our 2 daughters, and the kind of husband who never forgot our anniversary. We had the perfect life, or at least that's what I kept telling myself every single day. Our house had a beautiful garden that I tended with almost religious devotion. Those flowers, those perfectly trimmed hedges, that lush green lawn were my sanctuary, my escape from a reality I refused to acknowledge. But let me back up a little bit because you need to understand how I got here. Robert and I met when I was 22, fresh out of college with a degree in literature and dreams of becoming a writer. He was 25, already establishing himself in his career, stable and secure. My parents loved him immediately. My mother would always say, "Margaret, that man is going to take care of you for the rest of your life." And she was right in a way. He did take care of me. He paid the bills, maintained the house, provided everything we needed. But somewhere along the way, between the diapers and the school meetings and the endless routine of married life, we stopped being lovers and became roommates who shared a last name. I never complained. That's not who I was raised to be. My mother taught me that a good wife supports her husband, keeps a clean home, and doesn't ask for too much. So I buried my loneliness in my garden, in my book club, in volunteering at the local library. I convinced myself that what I was feeling, that emptiness, that constant ache for something more, was just a normal part of aging, of being married for so long. If you're watching this and thinking you might relate to what I'm going through, please hit that subscribe button because this story gets so much more complicated, and I need to know I'm not alone in this mess. The garden hose incident happened on a Saturday morning in June. It was one of those perfect summer days where the sun isn't too hot yet, and there's still dew on the grass. I was watering my rose bushes when the old hose finally gave out, splitting right down the middle and spraying water everywhere. I was soaked, frustrated, and Robert was inside watching golf like he did every Saturday. I drove to the hardware store on Maple Street, still in my wet gardening clothes, not caring how I looked because who was going to see me anyway. That's where I met Daniel. He was standing in the plumbing aisle, and I'll never forget the first thing he said to me. "Those roses must be something special to get you this worked up over a hose." He smiled, and it was the kind of smile that reaches someone's eyes. The kind I hadn't seen directed at me in years. Daniel was 45, divorced, and new to Portland. He had moved from Austin, Texas, trying to start fresh after his own marriage fell apart. We talked about hoses, then about gardens, then about everything else. Before I knew it, an hour had passed and I was sitting in the hardware store cafe drinking terrible coffee and laughing. Actually laughing, in a way I couldn't remember doing in years. He asked for my number. I should have said no. I should have told him I was married, happily married, and walked away. But I didn't. I gave him my number and told myself it was just friendly, just innocent. After all, I was 52 years old, a grandmother for heaven's sake. What could possibly happen? Everything. That's what happened. Daniel started texting me. Good morning messages, funny memes about gardening, questions about my day, little things that made me feel seen, noticed, alive. Robert never asked about my day. He would come home, eat dinner, and retreat to his office or the television. Our conversations had been reduced to logistics. What time are the girls coming over? Did you pay the electric bill? We need to fix the garage door. Meanwhile, Daniel wanted to know what I was reading, what I dreamed about, what made me happy. We started meeting for coffee. Just coffee, I kept telling myself. We would meet at a little cafe in Beaverton, far enough from my neighborhood that I wouldn't run into anyone I knew. We talked about books, about his failed marriage, about my daughters who are now adults with their own lives. He listened when I talked, really listened, not just waiting for his turn to speak. He made me feel like I mattered, like my thoughts and feelings were important. And if you think you know where this is going, make sure you're subscribed because what happens next will shock you. One afternoon, about 2 months into our friendship, Daniel invited me to his apartment. He said he wanted to show me the small garden he was trying to start on his balcony, needed my expert advice. I knew I shouldn't go. I knew exactly what it meant, what it could lead to. But I went anyway. I told Robert I was going to a book club meeting. He barely looked up from his computer, just waved and said, "Have fun." At Daniel's apartment, we did look at his garden. We talked about soil and sunlight and which herbs grow best in containers. Then we went inside, and he made tea, and we sat on his couch, and suddenly his hand was on mine, and he was looking at me with such intensity that I felt like I was burning from the inside out. "You're beautiful, Margaret," he whispered. "I know you don't hear it enough, but you are." No one had called me beautiful in decades. Robert stopped complimenting me years ago. I was just there, part of the furniture, reliable and unchanging. But Daniel saw me. He saw the woman I used to be, the woman I could still be. We kissed. It was soft at first, tentative, like we were both teenagers afraid of doing something wrong. Then it deepened, became urgent, desperate. All the loneliness, all the years of feeling invisible, poured out of me. We moved to his bedroom, and for the first time in 30 years, I was with someone who wasn't my husband. I'm not going to give you details, because that's not what this is about. What I will tell you is that in that moment, I felt alive in a way I thought was lost to me forever. I felt desired, passionate, free, and I felt guilty. God, the guilt was crushing. The entire drive home, I kept thinking about Robert, about our wedding vows, about the life we had built together. I thought about my daughters and what they would think if they knew their mother had just betrayed their father. I cried so hard I had to pull over on the side of the highway and compose myself before I could continue home. When I got there, Robert was exactly where I had left him, at his computer. "How was book club?" he asked without turning around. "It was good," I lied. "We discussed the new Margaret Atwood." He nodded, completely uninterested, and that's when something inside me broke. He didn't even care enough to notice I had been crying. He didn't care enough to look at me. I continued seeing Daniel. I told myself I would stop, that it was just a phase, that I would end it soon. But weeks turned into months. We would meet twice a week, sometimes 3 times. I became an expert at lying. I joined a fictional book club, a fictional volunteer group, a fictional gardening association. Robert never questioned any of it. Why would he? I had been the reliable, predictable Margaret for 30 years. The possibility that I might be living a double life never even crossed his mind. Please subscribe if you want to see how this story ends, because the betrayal I'm about to reveal will change everything you think you know about this situation. Daniel and I fell into a routine. Tuesday afternoons and Thursday mornings were ours. We would meet at his apartment, and for those few hours, I could pretend I was someone else, someone adventurous, someone passionate, someone who deserved to be happy. We would talk for hours about everything and nothing. He told me about his ex-wife, how she had cheated on him with his best friend, how devastated he had been. I told him about my marriage, about the slow death of intimacy, about feeling like I was disappearing a little more each day. "Leave him," Daniel would say. "You deserve more than a man who doesn't see you." But I couldn't. I thought about my daughters, about the grandchildren I was hoping for, about what divorce would do to our family. I thought about my mother's voice in my head, telling me that marriage is work, that you don't just quit when things get hard. I thought about the life Robert and I had built, the memories, the shared history. How do you throw away 30 years? Then came the day that changed everything. It was a Thursday, and I was supposed to meet Daniel at 2 o'clock. I had told Robert I was going to a Garden Society meeting in Salem, which would explain why I'd be gone for several hours. I was in my car, almost to Daniel's apartment, when my phone rang. It was my sister, Linda. Linda was 2 years younger than me, divorced, living in Seattle with her teenage son. We had always been close, talking on the phone at least once a week, visiting each other for holidays. She was the fun sister, the one who had lived an exciting life, traveled the world, had passionate affairs. I had always been a little envious of her freedom, her courage to live life on her own terms. "Maggie," she said when I answered, using the nickname only she called me, "I need to tell you something, and I need you to not hang up on me." Her voice was shaking, and I immediately pulled over. "What's wrong?" Is it Lucas? Is he okay? I asked, thinking of my nephew. Lucas is fine. It's about me. It's about something I did, something I've been doing, and you're going to hate me. My heart was pounding. I thought maybe she was sick. Maybe she had gotten into some kind of trouble. Linda, just tell me. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out. There was a long pause, and then she said, I've been seeing Robert. For 2 years, Maggie. I've been having an affair with your husband. I don't remember much about the next few minutes. I think I screamed. I know I was crying so hard I couldn't breathe. The world tilted sideways and nothing made sense. My sister, my husband, 2 years. While I was drowning in guilt over my months with Daniel, my own sister had been betraying me with my husband for 2 years. How could you? I finally managed to say. How could you do this to me? You're my sister. Linda was crying too, apologizing over and over, saying she didn't mean for it to happen, that it started innocently at a family barbecue and just spiraled out of control. She said she wanted to tell me so many times but was too afraid, too ashamed. She said Robert was going to leave me, that they had plans to be together, that he had been unhappy for years but didn't know how to tell me. I hung up on her. I sat in my car in complete shock, trying to process what I had just heard. My husband and my sister. The 2 people I trusted most in the world had been lying to me, sneaking around behind my back, planning a future together while I was watering my roses and pretending everything was fine. If you're still watching, hit that subscribe button because this story is far from over, and the decisions I'm about to make will blow your mind. I didn't go to Daniel's apartment. I turned my car around and drove home. When I got there, Robert's car was in the driveway. I walked in through the front door, and he was in the living room on his phone, smiling at something on the screen. He looked up when I came in, and his smile faded when he saw my face. Margaret, what's wrong? He asked, standing up. Linda called me, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. She told me everything. I watched the color drain from his face. He opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again. I can explain, he started, but I held up my hand. Don't. Just don't. I don't want to hear your excuses or your justifications. I want you to answer one question. Were you planning to leave me? He looked at the floor, and that was answer enough. She told you then, he said quietly. We were going to tell you together, after the holidays. We didn't want to ruin Thanksgiving and Christmas for the girls. The casual way he said it, like he was discussing a business merger and not the destruction of our family, made me want to scream. How long have you been unhappy? I asked. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Emotion. Honestly, Margaret, about 10 years, maybe longer. We grew apart. You have your garden and your books. I have my work and my routines. We're strangers living in the same house. You must have felt it too. He was right, and that made it so much worse. I had felt it. I had been so lonely that I fell into the arms of a man I barely knew, but I never would have turned to his brother, to his family. That betrayal cut deeper than anything else. I've been seeing someone too, I said, and watched his eyes widen in shock. For 4 months, someone who makes me feel alive, who listens to me, who sees me as more than just a maid and a cook and a person who exists to make your life easier. Robert looked like I had slapped him. Who? He demanded. Do I know him? I shook my head. No, you don't. And it doesn't matter because this isn't about him. This is about us, about what we've become, about the fact that my own sister felt comfortable enough to sleep with my husband. We stood there in our living room, 2 people who had promised to love each other forever, now complete strangers. What do we do now? He asked. I didn't have an answer. I couldn't think. I couldn't process. Everything I thought I knew about my life had been a lie. Don't forget to subscribe because the next part of this story involves a choice that will change everything. I left the house. I got in my car and I drove. I didn't know where I was going until I ended up at Daniel's apartment. He opened the door, took one look at my face, and pulled me inside. I told him everything. About Linda, about Robert, about the 2 years of lies. He held me while I cried, Didn't say anything, just let me feel everything I needed to feel. What are you going to do? He finally asked. That was the question, wasn't it? What was I going to do? I could divorce Robert, be with Daniel, start a new life. I could forgive Robert, end things with Daniel, try to rebuild my marriage. I could walk away from both of them and figure out who I was without either man defining me. Every option felt impossible. I don't know, I whispered. I'm 52 years old. I'm supposed to have my life figured out by now. I'm supposed to be planning retirement and enjoying my grandchildren, not dealing with adultery and betrayal and having to rebuild my entire existence. Daniel took my face in his hands. Age doesn't mean you stop deserving happiness. Age doesn't mean you should settle for less than you deserve. You have so much life left to live, Margaret. Don't waste it on someone who doesn't value you. But was I valuing myself by running to another man? Was I just replacing one relationship with another without actually dealing with the real problem, which was that I didn't know who I was anymore? I had been Robert's wife for so long that I had forgotten to be Margaret. I had spent 30 years caring for everyone else, making sure everyone else was happy, that I never stopped to ask myself what I wanted, what I needed, what would make me feel fulfilled. I went home late that night. Robert was still up waiting for me. We need to talk, he said. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where we had shared thousands of meals, where we had helped our daughters with their homework, where we had planned vacations and discussed finances and made all the boring, everyday decisions that make up a life together. I don't love Linda, he said. I mean, I care about her, but I'm not in love with her. It was exciting. It was an escape, but it wasn't real. What we have, Margaret, this is real. 30 years is real. Our daughters are real. Our life together is real. I looked at him and felt nothing but exhaustion. But do you love me, Robert? Because caring about our history isn't the same as loving me. He was quiet for a long time. I don't know, he finally admitted. I think we stopped really loving each other a long time ago and just kept going through the motions because it was easier than admitting we had failed. His honesty broke something in me. Because he was right. We had failed. Not spectacularly, not dramatically, but slowly, quietly, over years of neglect and complacency, and choosing the easy path instead of the hard one. Make sure you're subscribed, because the revelation I'm about to share will make you question everything about love and loyalty. Over the next few weeks, I had to tell our daughters. Emily, our oldest, was 30 years old and pregnant with her first child. She was devastated. She screamed at me, at Robert, called us selfish and immature, and said we were ruining her baby's chance at having a normal family. Hannah, who was 27 and engaged, postponed her wedding. She couldn't imagine celebrating love when her parents' marriage was falling apart. And the worst part was telling them about Linda. They had loved their aunt, had spent summers with her, had trusted her. That betrayal hurt them almost as much as ours did. I stopped seeing Daniel. Not because I didn't care about him, but because I realized I was using him as a band-aid for a much deeper wound. I needed to figure out who I was, what I wanted from my life, before I could be in any relationship with anyone. He understood, or at least he said he did. He told me he would wait if I wanted him to, but he couldn't promise forever. No one can promise forever, I've learned. Forever is a fantasy we tell ourselves to feel safe. Robert moved out. He got an apartment in downtown Portland, and we started the painful process of separating our lives. Dividing up 30 years is harder than you might think. Every object has a memory attached to it. The coffee maker we got as a wedding present. The painting we bought on our trip to San Francisco. The photo albums documenting a life that no longer exists. We were polite about it, almost eerily so. No screaming matches, no thrown dishes, just a quiet, sad dissolution of everything we had built together. Linda tried to call me every day. I didn't answer. I wasn't ready to face her, to hear her excuses, to process the magnitude of her betrayal. My own sister had stabbed me in the back, and for what? A man who admitted he didn't even love her? I finally agreed to meet her 6 weeks after her confession. We met at a neutral location, a coffee shop in Gresham where neither of us had any history. She looked terrible. She had lost weight, had dark circles under her eyes, looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. "Maggie," she said when she saw me, tears already streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." I sat down across from her, and I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness. Just a hollow emptiness where my love for my sister used to be. "Why?" I asked. "Of all the men in the world, why did it have to be my husband?" She cried harder, and I felt a sick satisfaction in her pain. "I don't know. It just happened. We were talking at your 4th of July barbecue, and he was telling me how lonely he was, and I was telling him about my divorce, and we just connected. I know how terrible that sounds. I know there's no excuse. But it wasn't planned, Maggie. We didn't wake up one day and decide to destroy your life. But they had destroyed it. Maybe not intentionally, but the result was the same. My marriage was over. My relationship with my sister was shattered. My daughters were traumatized, and I was left trying to piece together a life from the rubble. Subscribe now, because what I'm about to reveal will completely change how you see this entire situation. Here's what no one tells you about betrayal. It doesn't just hurt in the moment. It infects everything. I started questioning every memory, every interaction, every moment of my marriage. When Robert said he had to work late, was he really at the office, or was he with Linda? When Linda came to visit and stayed in our guest room, did they sneak around while I was sleeping? How many times did they laugh at me behind my back? How many times did they lie directly to my face? I went to therapy. My therapist, Dr. Sarah Chen, was a kind woman in her 60s who specialized in trauma and betrayal. She helped me understand that what I was feeling was normal, that the anger and the sadness and the confusion were all valid. But she also pushed me to look at my own role in the failure of my marriage. "I'm not saying you're responsible for Robert's affair," she clarified when I got defensive. "He made that choice, and he has to live with the consequences. But you said yourself that you were unhappy for years. Why didn't you address it? Why didn't you tell Robert how you were feeling?" I didn't have a good answer. Fear, maybe. Conditioning. The belief that a good wife doesn't complain. The hope that if I just kept being perfect, kept maintaining the house and the garden and the appearance of happiness, that somehow it would become real. "You deserve to be more than someone's wife," Dr. Chen said. "You deserve to be Margaret, whoever that is. When's the last time you did something just because you wanted to, not because it was expected of you?" I couldn't remember. Even my affair with Daniel had been a reaction to Robert's neglect, not a genuine choice made from a place of wholeness and self-knowledge. So I started trying to figure out who I was. I went back to writing, something I had abandoned when the girls were born. I joined a real book club, not a fictional one. I took a pottery class. I volunteered at a women's shelter. I traveled alone for the first time in my life, took a trip to Maine and spent a week walking on the beach and eating lobster and reading books and not having to check in with anyone. It was terrifying. It was liberating. It was the beginning of something I couldn't quite name yet. Robert and Linda's relationship didn't last. Of course it didn't. Relationships built on betrayal rarely do. They broke up about 3 months after everything came out. Robert tried to reconcile with me. He said he had made a terrible mistake, that he wanted to work on our marriage, that he was willing to do therapy and put in the effort he should have been putting in all along. I said no. Not because I didn't love him anymore, but because I was starting to love myself more. I was starting to understand that staying in a marriage just because we had history wasn't enough. We would have to completely rebuild, and I wasn't sure I wanted to. I wasn't sure I wanted to go back to being Robert's wife when I was just starting to discover who Margaret was. Please subscribe if you want to know how I'm handling all of this now and what decision I ultimately made about my future. Daniel reached out again. He had been patient, had given me space, but he wanted to know if there was a future for us. We met for coffee, at that same cafe in Beaverton, where we used to meet when I was still married. It felt like a lifetime ago. He looked the same, smiled the same way, but something was different. I was different. "I care about you," I told him honestly. "You made me feel things I thought were dead inside me. You reminded me that I'm more than just a wife and a mother and a grandmother. But I don't think I can be with you right now. I don't think I can be with anyone right now." He looked disappointed but not surprised. "I understand," he said. "But for what it's worth, Margaret, I think you're the bravest person I know. You're choosing yourself, and that's not easy." Maybe it was brave. It didn't feel brave. It felt lonely and scary and uncertain, but it also felt right. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't defining myself by my relationship to a man. I wasn't Robert's wife or Daniel's lover or anyone's mother or sister. I was just Margaret, figuring out what that meant. The divorce was finalized 6 months ago. Robert and I split everything down the middle, and I kept the house. I couldn't leave my garden, not after everything. Those roses had witnessed my loneliness, my affair, my pain, and my healing. They deserved to be tended by someone who understood their value. My relationship with Linda is still broken. I don't know if it will ever be repaired. She sends me letters sometimes, long, rambling apologies that I read and then put in a drawer. Maybe someday I'll be able to forgive her. Maybe someday I'll be able to look at her without seeing her betrayal. But that day isn't today. My daughters are slowly coming around. Emily had her baby, a beautiful little girl named Sophie, and she's starting to understand that relationships are complicated, that people are flawed, that her parents are human beings who made mistakes. Hannah postponed her wedding but eventually set a new date. She asked me to help her plan it, and I said yes. We're rebuilding our relationship slowly, carefully, honestly. And me? I'm still figuring it out. Some days are good. I wake up and feel excited about the possibilities ahead. I'm writing again, really writing, working on a novel about a woman who discovers herself late in life. I'm dating, casually, nothing serious. I'm learning to enjoy my own company, to be comfortable in silence, to not need someone else to validate my existence. But some days are hard. I wake up and feel the weight of 30 years of my life being over. I feel the loneliness of coming home to an empty house. I wonder if I made the right choices, if I should have fought harder for my marriage, if I gave up too easily. Subscribe to this channel because I need your perspective on something crucial that I'm still wrestling with. Here's where I am right now, and why I'm sharing this story with all of you. Last week, Robert called me. He's been in therapy, he says. He's been working on himself, understanding why he was so unhappy, why he sought comfort in my sister instead of fixing our marriage. He's ready to do the work now, he says. He wants to try again. He wants to see if we can rebuild what we lost, if we can create something new from the ashes of what we destroyed. And I don't know what to do. Part of me wants to try. Part of me remembers the good times, the early years when we were happy, the family we created, the life we shared. 30 years is a long time. That history means something. Those memories are real. Our daughters want us to try. They're not pushing me, but I can see the hope in their eyes when they talk about us. But another part of me is terrified of going back to being invisible, terrified of losing myself again, terrified that we'll put in all this work and end up right back where we started. Two strangers sharing a house and a last name but not a life. And then there's Daniel. He's still in Portland. We run into each other sometimes at the farmer's market or the bookstore. It's awkward but not painful. He's dating someone new, a woman closer to his age who seems nice. Part of me wonders what would have happened if I had chosen him, if I had left Robert and started fresh with someone who saw me, who wanted me, who made me feel alive. But I also know that you can't build a life on escape. You can't build a future on running away from your problems. You have to face them, deal with them, heal from them before you can move forward. So here I am, 53 years old now, standing at a crossroads. I have a choice to make. Do I give Robert another chance? Do I stay single and keep exploring who I am without the weight of a relationship? Do I put myself out there and try to find love again? Real love? The kind that's built on honesty and respect and genuine connection? I don't have the answer. And that's why I'm asking you, what would you do in my place? If you had lived 30 years in a marriage that slowly died, if your husband had betrayed you with your own sister, if you had found passion with someone new but knew it wasn't real, if you had finally started to discover yourself and your worth, what would you choose? Would you go back? Would you start over? Would you stay alone and keep growing? Leave a comment and tell me what you think. Tell me your stories. Tell me if you've been in a similar situation and how you handled it. Tell me if I'm being foolish for even considering Robert's request. Tell me if I'm being selfish for putting my own happiness ahead of my family's desire for us to reconcile. And please, subscribe to this channel, because whatever I decide, I'm going to share it with you. This journey isn't over. My story doesn't end here. I'm still writing it, still living it, still figuring out what it means to be Margaret after decades of being someone else's wife. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here with me in this mess. Thank you for not judging me. Or if you are judging me, thank you for doing it honestly. I need that honesty. I need to know that I'm not alone in this confusion, in this pain, in this strange, terrifying, exhilarating process of becoming myself. So tell me, what would you do in my place?